Now the Zoom is live. Now we're recording, baby.
Whoa, aren't I supposed to get like a non-disclosure agreement where it's like your host is recording?
Sue
No,
me,
not
man.
happening.
Sue me. I don't care. I have no money.
Dude, love it,
Oh,
man.
man. All
So let's go back to
right.
like important topics of business.
Yeah. We're so going to talk about the boots. Same size, too.
That's hilarious.
Let's piece these broken pieces together.
We are on to episode 11, ladies and gentlemen. This is pHumblepodcast. I'm yours truly, Pejman or Pej. My guest today, I haven't seen since his wedding. He got married. He got married and dipped out of Cali.
Got a lot grayer too.
Well, you kind of had that already. Hey, I was getting gray and I did something about it. You know what I'm saying?
See, pragmatic decisions. Pragmatic decisions.
This is
Love
my
it.
first episode, I guess, that I'm blonde for, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, the whole plan with this was to go platinum blonde, so I got another round of bleaching to do in a week. So what do you think?
That's gonna be a lot of bleach. that's what I think about that. Man,
Oh my
you
God.
buy stock in some Clorox.
There you go. Yeah, I'm literally helping that business.
Exactly.
So my friend here from a while back, we met in Cali through in our youth, during our youth days, but it's way more than that. We're good friends. We've been ever since. I don't know if we're good human beings, but
Debatable. I had to pay him to come to my wedding. I was like, can you please be a
God.
guest just to fill the chair?
That's a lie. That is a lie. I would have come for free, even though you paid.
I would have come. Oh man.
Anyway, without further ado, my good friend from Minnesota, his name is Ryan Burke. What's going on, man?
Buddy, I am so happy to be here. This is I'm again, like, since we spoke, since my wedding, so much has happened. So like I feel
Can
like
I just
this,
say before we go on to so much that has happened,
yeah.
what a baller move that you pulled at your wedding. You DJ'd your own wedding, bro. That was next level stuff. I was like, wow. This
Well,
man,
like,
yeah, this man is
being
doing
a-
first dances. He's DJing the dance. He's doing it all.
well, when you're so not involved in the wedding planning, like as a guy, like any smart fiance husband is like, yep, that's what you want to do. Okay, that sounds good. No problem. That color dress, this venue, great, whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and like, what control what you can control, right? And I was like, all right, playlist, I can do that. Save money and DJ, what? Ricka. And
I loved it though,
yeah.
man. That was great. You got married up in the mountains there in Santa Cruz. That was cool.
Yeah, the Redwood Forest,
That's
great spot. Only a couple places in the country where you can get those kind of redwoods, and
That's right.
other than that, I think northern China.
There you go. Which
Right.
you also have been to, and that's something I want to talk about.
Yeah, true. We could do it, like, because I was not going to pay for your plane ticket to fly to the wedding in China, so we changed the whole thing. Did NorCal, worked
He
out
didn't
great.
pay me, ladies and gentlemen. Don't. He's definitely a goofball, as you can see here.
That's going to be
But-
the key takeaway.
Yeah, that's why, and appreciate you getting on here on like kind of short notice, because I only asked this man like yesterday, hey, can you be on my podcast like tomorrow?
I'm basically a fill-in. He had like three other very prominent intellectual scholars that all just bailed, and he's like, "Look, Ryan, you're not all that smart, but you're kind of funny. Maybe just come over and talk."
The smartest thing you did is how much you saved on your wedding versus what I did versus what I did for mine. So there you go.
That's what this whole podcast is about, right? Life lessons, life choices, development. Learn
Yes,
from others, man.
that's right. That's right. I'm learning in reverse, like what I should have done.
I could read the book How It's Not Done by Ryan Burke. Here we go.
Oh my God, I'm just teasing you, man. So to kind of cap things off, to start things off, first of
Yeah.
all, you're in Austin now, or near
Yeah.
Austin,
Yep.
Texas, for people who don't know. I didn't know initially. But so Austin, Texas, what moved you out there, man? You weren't too far from this shooting that just happened recently too.
Yeah, the shooting's kind of nuts. It happened literally 20 minutes from our place, and like that had a whole psychological impact. You know, when you see stuff on the news, you're like, "Oh, that's terrible." Like all like recent shootings, school shootings, wherever, you know, and you're kind of like, "Man, that's terrible. That's a tragedy." And you know, your heart goes out to it. When you experience it in your neighborhood, there's a whole nother psychological impact that happens that you don't foresee, you don't know about in watching those news stories. And like the key example for me was once they released a picture of the suspect, and you're like, okay, this is the guy, he's still on the loose. We're asking, you know, citizens to shelter in place. And because I'm me, I'm like, whatever, I'm going to the gas station. Like, you know, like, and so go out and you go into the, you know, go in the car, you pull in, whatever. And I look over and there was a gentleman who probably looked nothing like the suspect, right? Like had a beard, which was probably the only, and a red sweatshirt, unlike the gray sweatshirt description. But in the back of my head, as I kind of like briefly look and you're like, all right, you kind of keep walking. I'm like, is that the guy?
Oh my
Is
God.
that him?
Yeah.
He's still
That's
on
the
the loose.
psychological part you're talking
Right.
about.
That you
Yeah.
don't ever predict or force because it's like, you know, still on the loose, shooter at large. Here's the picture of him. It's like all over everywhere. And
Yeah.
then you start to think, okay, well, 20 minutes, you know, if you're not going to hang around at the scene, you're going to leave. 20 minutes ain't that, you know, like,
Wow.
right? Like you could
Yeah.
go into hiding anywhere. And like, are you booking it for the border or like what's, you know what I mean? Like,
I
so
know.
that kind of weird psychological impact. Honey, lock the doors, double up, you know,
Yeah.
dog, no, you're going to stay here instead of come with me to the gas station, you know, stuff like that. Like weird
Wow.
psychological impact. Yeah.
And I'm sure it's like 5 times heightened even
Yeah.
when you're a father like you are. So
Yeah.
yeah. That's much
That's been a
worse.
life-changing experience as well. I mean, in addition to like psychological problems, I'm realizing what this lighting is doing with my beard in comparison to how good yours looks. Like,
What do you
dude,
mean?
like,
Bro,
yeah.
you look good in all lighting, especially when it's off, you know what I mean?
See, this is the other things I had to pay him for, ladies and gentlemen. These compliments, that check is still yet Venmo, man. Well, don't worry,
I'm
I'm
still
good
waiting
for
on the wedding check, by the way. But man,
That's
first of all,
awesome.
I'm glad that the suspect at large is now in custody.
Yep.
I know that was the latest news with that. And he was a former part of the police force or something,
Yeah,
right?
former detective, crazy, right? Like, and again, I mean, I think that story alone is a good example of, it's called the power elite, right? Where you have media along with business, along with military, having a super strong influence on the society at large, like the power elite. Because the initial story was like active shooter, you know, shooting on the scene or whatever, and granted, it doesn't take away from the severity of it and how tragic it was,
Mhm.
but it boils down to it was a domestic situation where like and the guy killed like his wife and daughter.
Oh,
Like terrible, right? Like terrible, absolutely. But the
yeah,
fact that like initially that heightened awareness of the messaging that came down was active shooter in a metropolitan shopping area.
yeah, man.
So like that influence, man, like
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. I mean, um, I've talked about like the gun violence in this country in general over the last over a couple episodes. But as you see in my posts on Instagram, I'm a major, uh, like a
Huge
majorly,
advocate for social development. I
yeah,
see in that.
advocate
Yeah.
for social justice, social development, betterment. Um, and this whole show is all about bringing all perspectives from all parts of the country and the world, right?
Cool.
And I'd like to learn. That's my goal. I mean, what's going on with this country right now, with the how
Mm,
polarized it is,
mm.
and everything. And by the way, today is 420, and this is the day that it's uh the officer who killed George Floyd was actually
Yeah.
convicted, and he was
Yeah.
convicted on 3 accounts. So there's some, I don't even know if you can call it justice, because George Floyd is no longer here,
Mm,
which
mm.
is in your state, actually.
Yeah.
Took place in your state of Minnesota. um
You betcha.
yeah, you betcha.
It's amazing, Pej, like the research in the background that you've done, especially like you said on short notice. Like, man,
Well, I
the
mean, that's coincidence. Actually, I realized it was I realized that was a link between
yeah.
you and that sad story. But
So the funny, real quick, I mean, because I think it's pertinent that, like, my wife even points out that she saw with the verdict being, announced today,
yeah.
and although we think that that's, I think a big step, her comment was, you know, the right decision made by a flawed justice system still kind of
Mm.
feels empty, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And the
Mm.
fact that it's got to be like celebrated, because we've seen so many, like maybe um, people being acquitted on one account or another,
Oh
that
my God.
necessarily that you're like that's injustice. This is an injustice system.
Right.
And so the fact that it's got to be noted as a win or a right decision in a still flawed system,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot
It's
of work to
it's
do.
it's baby steps. But we will take those baby steps if it's in the right direction. And I posted about it earlier. And this thing is not, we're not anywhere near where we need to be as a society or as a nation or even as a
Yeah.
world. But this is one small step that's a semblance of hope. And I credit that to the massive peaceful protests and the social movement on all of these injustices throughout
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
the country.
when a baby falls down, people are, learning to take its first steps and falls down. No one ever says, "Well, that was stupid, waste of time," or whatever. People applaud its first attempts to walk and to move
Mm,
forward, right?
yeah,
So you
yeah,
said
yeah.
baby steps, and so the idea of like, all right, this may be like a one small step or a teetered step that you're kind of like, all right, we're moving in the right direction,
Yes,
So
and that is that's a small victory. So
yeah,
we'll take that and many more hopefully to come.
yes, yes, sir.
Um, so Minnesota boy. So let's talk about your humble beginnings. Where
Whew.
you were born in Minnesota, is that right?
Yeah, you betcha.
So this man, he can uh throw in the that Minnesota accent on a whim, like out of nowhere, right? And he's and
God, yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah. You're not even trying. Like if I'm tired, it comes out and I don't even want it to. God.
my God, man. I remember laughing so hard when we were younger at how you just switched up out of nowhere.
You sounded Minnesota there so hard. It was so
That was a mix
God.
of Persian accent and something else. I don't know what that
Dude,
was.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, man. So you were born in Minnesota? How long or how many years of your early life did you spend there before your first move?
Yeah. Oh, man, for the first move, that's tricky. I'd say I was there till I was about 17. Before making like a move. I went to South Carolina for a little bit.
See, I didn't
Um,
know that.
yeah,
What
I
moved you
could.
there? What moved you there?
I want to do some volunteer work. It was a good opportunity. Like, got down there and like, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to go to Myrtle Beach for a 17-year-old, for being really candid, right?
That's
So
cool.
left, did that lived there for a year. Then moved back, was in Minnesota for a bit, then moved, where go after that.
So right out of high school, you move on to South Carolina. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
okay? Okay.
more or
So
less. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, depending on how in depth like this conversation you want to go, like you're talking about like humble beginnings, like so. I mean, and this is a granted, relationships have much been mended since then,
Mhm.
but there was a lot of like stuff at home, just challenging. My mom, single mom,
Mm,
breast cancer survivor at the time. Her and I butting heads a lot. That
mm.
like the incentive on top of the fact of like let's go out and see stuff was like, you know what, I need to emancipate myself a little bit, which I think a lot of teenagers feel initially right out the get-go. So it was like
Yeah.
multifaceted.
Okay. So many reasons to make a change.
Yeah.
Um, I can relate to that, man. I moved at 17. I got shipped from Maryland, as you know.
Yeah.
I was raised in Maryland, and and at 17, I got shipped over here to California. Same thing, kind of finding myself, figuring it out.
Yep.
Wasn't really being caring with about my future right out of high school.
Yeah. You.
Yeah,
I knew
so
there was a reason why you and I got along so great. It's those hardships that galvanize that make you stronger people, man. Like that
and
make you
honest to
better.
God, we've never talked about this till this moment
That's true.
about this moving out at
Yeah.
17. But
Oh,
that's cool.
I got kicked out at
Same,
17.
same, same.
That's so
I had a week's notice. I had a week's notice,
dude,
literally.
that's so funny. Yeah.
I was. Were you also told what like how much timeline between the warning to get the hell out to the point of getting to South Carolina?
Initially, it was by police escort. So we,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Wow.
it was like it went to a friend's house, was taken to a friend's house. So it was
Okay,
like,
okay,
see you
okay.
later.
Yeah.
You're getting dropped off here. Got
Uh-huh.
it. Okay. And then
Yeah.
collectively after that, it was about like, yeah, probably about a month. So I had a little more than just a week,
Okay,
where it was
well, that's well good. I mean,
like, woo,
well, I mean, luckily for me, police didn't get involved. My dad is much scarier than the police, so, so he was he was like,
yeah.
you're leaving in 1 week," and so
Tick tick. Then that's when the clock started. Look at
right.
that. The
And you
future
know,
Pej.
yeah, and the funniest thing about that, or funny and sad at the same time, was I wasn't even phased by it. I was like, okay, like it was just that's where my mind
Yeah.
was at that point in my
Yeah.
life. I was
Yeah,
just
dude.
like
Yeah.
whatever. I was, I didn't really just finish high school. Was about to
Yeah.
I had signed up for community college, kind of like not really taking anything seriously. So my dad was like, "We're taking you." And my sister lived in California at the time, so
Gotcha. Gotcha.
that was the connection to California. And so I kind of got
Hmm.
moved out here, and that was where my life was to change for the way
Yeah.
better, I would say.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I mean, I think that like what you described so accurately was that that man, when you've had a tough upbringing, is that like it's like having blinders on of where you see and what you care about. When like, I was very short-sighted as a teen. Like I don't care, it doesn't matter. Like I've got no goals or aspirations or whatever. It's like
Mhm.
A to B, and like like if I don't get to C, I don't care. It doesn't really matter because like hey, I'll be happy with A to B, because that's all that really is relevant right now.
Yeah.
So that's I mean I think that's dead on that description.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm glad that I think a lot of youth, especially boys, dealt with stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I had Max on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had Max on here like I think it was week 3 or week 3 of this thing. And
Man,
and
yeah,
he talked about similar things, right?
yeah,
Out of high school from Tennessee. And
yeah,
so you guys, if you haven't heard that, you guys can go back and listen to that. He's a good friend of both of us,
yeah,
both of ours. But yeah, so South Carolina was your next step after a month.
yeah.
How did you come
S-
up with that? This like, what was there? Like, what was the volunteer work there?
Dude, so do you want to hear like the condensed version, or do you want a whole like highlight reel, or like a
I want all the smoke, man. Give me everything.
bro? So all right. So obviously had a rough patch, right? Was looking for like something, to make a move, make things better, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I was sitting literally playing video games. I was playing hockey on my PlayStation. I'll never forget this. And my mom comes over and she gives me a stack of books, okay? Like a stack of books. She was always giving me books, which is dumb because I don't read. And again, that's just kind of an example. I really was not, never been an avid reader or whatever.
I
Here's some
wasn't a
books.
reader either. I
And I'm
wasn't a reader.
like, great, thank you. You know how to
Yeah.
connect. Um, so, but on the top of the stack of the books was a was a printout of an email, a
Oh.
printout, yeah, of an email, and it said youth volunteers wanted in the following locations, and I was like, oh, well, yo, there's your sign.
Yeah.
If you're looking, like you're looking for something, because hockey wasn't gonna do it on a video game. So that's how it kind of, that was like the catalyst, the kind of jump off point for what became ultimately a life changing experience through multiple modes of service, and personal growth and development. So yeah,
Okay. That's
yeah.
not even that long of a story, man. You make it sound like you're gonna get
Dude,
into it.
I'm so good at making a long story long. Like you have no idea. Like I'm trying really hard.
No,
Like
man, you're doing well. You're doing well. The funny part about that story is that you were playing a game that's played on ice in a city filled with ice. Like
you
most
betcha.
people most people were in that climate are like thinking of like a sunny weather or like playing a
Dude, video
outdoor game.
games that are based around sunshine and flowers sucked at the time. Like I was like, oh God, here's the video game about being at the beach.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
they just didn't,
No, I'll
you
give you
know.
that. Hockey games are fun to play. I'll admit. And PlayStation was the console to have it.
I'm gonna want a copy of this recording just for the fact that you said hockey is a great game to play. Like that's
I can't play it. I can't. I'm the worst.
Dude, I'd throw you on ice any day. Let's do this. This would be great. Like,
And
I work with people from Maryland every day.
are you
I'm not
serious?
even kidding. Dead
You bring
serious.
you bring me up, and then they just look at you like, "Who the hell are you talking?" Yeah,
Oh,
like everyone.
hey,
It is
you're
a
in
small
Baltimore?
state.
Oh,
It is a
yeah,
small
hold on a
state.
second.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
are you familiar with Fumble? Like,
Fumble. Not even Pej, but fumble.
yeah. I figure this podcast will get more prestige and recognition moving forward, and you'll be the host from Fumble. That's it. Like that's
That's
it. No.
hey, I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take whatever people are willing to give me. But
Dude.
so no, man. No, yeah. I suck at hockey. So and I suck at anything that requires mobility on wheels on their feet or on skates on their feet or on any of those.
I'm not gonna send you boots next time. We're gonna send you rollerblades. This is gonna be
Okay,
fantastic.
let's real quickly on a tangent because you've already shown your boots, accurate size and all, and you
Boots with the fur. Thank you.
oh my god. All right, so this whole thing with the boots, this is a big inside joke between Ryan and I, which started from one of his visits when we were already good friends. He was visiting at this time Elk Grove, where I was living with my parents at the time, and he shows up and he's like, "Hey man, I'm in town." I was like, "Bro, come over. Let's get together." And I was like, "Hey, bring." I was like, "Bring some athletic shoes so we can go hoop." And so this man literally shows up in what initially I thought were steel toe boots.
So all of that's true. Can't deny any of that. All of it's true, 100% accurate. But let's also like rewind that story back for a minute.
Okay.
When it was like one of Ryan's visits and Ryan was like, yo, I'm in town, which all of that up until that point, appropriate attire. Hey man, I'm in town. Let's grab lunch. Hey man, I'm in town. Let's go check out a movie. Hey man, let's go get some. And then all of a sudden pivoted of like, oh, you drove 3 hours in advance to get up here. What are you wearing? Oh, you're wearing non-basketball shoes and stuff? Come play basketball, Ryan. That's what we're gonna do. Like in your jeans and boots.
That was my only hope of having an advantage, is the fact that you were wearing jeans and boots.
Steel-toed freaking clonkers.
And to this man's credit, he didn't say no. He was all in. All the blisters that were to follow Like
Oh,
he
dude, yeah,
paid.
that's real.
He paid the dues for that game.
That's real.
And I think we went to Del Taco, if I remember correctly. We
Man, I
went
would,
yeah, I think we
I
went to
would.
Del Taco, man.
All I remember is the boots.
I think
That's
everything
it.
else was a blur because you were
Yeah,
so much pain.
still got PTSD from the boots. Boots guy. So to flip it back on on your birthday, I think I had a set of boots sent over to
That's
you.
right. You did. Oh my God. Yes, he shipped me. Okay, not even like we're in two different states by this point. This is a birthday from a few years ago.
Texas and California.
Texas and California. And he, I get a, I get a. He's like, well, what's your address, by the way? I thought he's coming to visit again, and then
Never
I get-
again. Never again. Never.
I get a shipment, and it's this big box. I have no idea who it's from. Like he doesn't tell me he's like buying me anything or anything of sort. And I open it, and there's legitimately two big black boots, very close in resemblance to the ones he was wearing. Of course, my feet were much bigger. There you go.
Still hasn't put them on. Doesn't know how to tie his own laces.
No, I don't. I wear flip flops. Oh man, that was fun, man. That was what a prank that was, and I loved it. I still have those boots, by the way. They're buried in my closet because I'm never gonna wear them. But
Collecting dust. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
oh my God, what a
I'm
fun.
coming to play basketball next week. You better have those boots ready.
You better be here, man. I'm counting on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So South Carolina now. So
Yeah.
so you get to South Carolina.
Yeah.
And so where do you go for this volunteer work?
So it was called Lewis Gregory Baha'i School, and did that, and it was an awesome opportunity, man, because it was very much volunteer based.
Yeah.
A chance for you could do all kinds of stuff, work in the kitchen, do some landscaping. There was a no joke like radio booth where I could be a DJ, so the radio station. Yeah,
That's
that
where
was
you
kind of
learned
fun.
it. Yeah.
And it was like I said, it was a good and a time of angst for any teenager, like those teenage years, like later teenage years especially. But it was a great, it was kind of like South Carolina, middle of nowhere. It shows you how much I grew in advance based on where we first met each other in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Middle of nowhere, still working on life development, but it was good, man. Like I said, it was the jump off point, the kickoff point for really a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-improvement. Everything that you get told as a kid from your parents, it's really kind of like either A, unfiltered, B, imposed upon you, and lastly, unquestioned, you know. And I think that pushback in your teenage years is very much questioning a lot of that stuff. And then once you get on your own at whatever age that is, then you get to not only like question it, but you get to fact check it, where it's like, all right, how valid is that? And you're like, screw that. I'm not going to do that, Norm. I'm doing my own thing. And you go do your own damn thing, and you're like, nope, that was not as good. This is much better. And you then it becomes from an outside influence to an internal driving force. Yo, I fact checked this. This is good. It's legit. This is how it works. And by the way, I wasn't told A, B, and C, but I also found out this about it. And so it becomes your own versus just a point of reference that you either rebel against or want to disbelieve because you haven't had a chance to fact check it, to an internal, yep, nope, that's certitude. That's good. Rolling with that. So
That's good, man. So you had your own experiences that you were building on at this point in South Carolina.
yeah, I would say that would be the baby steps. Talking about like the society, those were the baby steps. Like I wouldn't say like, oh, I got all figured out, perfect.
No,
you
of
know,
course,
a year later. Yeah.
And how long did you spend at Lewis Gregory?
It was about a year. Yeah.
A year. Okay, so
Yep.
you were there till basically into your 18th
Yep.
year of life, and then So what happened with that? How did you decide on your next gig?
Whew. So like I said, wrapped up there. Let's see, came back home.
By the way, was that a year contract to begin with, or were you just there for a year and then decided to leave? How did it work?
Almost got sent home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Almost was cut short by not my timeline again.
And then you were like, wait, my home sent me here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was almost a short trip on a couple of occasions. I've still got those emails from the administration. Like,
Right.
fact, dude, no joke. But I was like, look, it was like shape up or ship out type of perspective. So it was like, all right, let's just buckle down and like get this right. And so,
I see.
completed became like a very like a value add to Lewis Gregory. Was helping out, would get up for work on time, like,
Yeah.
getting along with the other volunteers and all of that. So it was good from that point, like again, a learning moment. After that 12 months, I think it was like give or take 14 months, something
Hmm.
like that. Left there, came back, went to Minnesota, back home, and and was like, didn't, again, still having that myopic kind of short-sighted way of thinking, didn't have college plans at the time. It's like, well, I guess I'll start working. Mom was having me pay rent, so it was like gotta work.
Yeah.
So worked overnights at a gas station,
All
like,
right.
yeah, doing
Yeah.
that illustrious career,
Yeah.
like
Humble
overnights.
beginnings, as we said, man.
Bro, like, whew, I didn't, so yeah, there was no scope. I mean, that's what I love about working with you, Pej, is just talking to you. The conversations are so authentic and so fluid that we can take it, and I know you as well. We can keep the conversations as superficial and flawed to like as like scholarly and elevated as and arrange quickly, and I love that. So with
Yeah.
humble beginnings in mind, like I said, I worked overnights at a gas station for like 3 years. I mean, depending on how disclosing we want to be, didn't get everything all kind of worked out the first time around. And at 19, I got kicked out again.
Hmm.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
exciting time. Uh, yeah,
So
like,
it. By the way, you can share as much as you feel okay sharing. It's not. There's no pressure on that. So
I'm
I'll
very,
ask
so,
questions. Yeah, I'll
dude,
ask questions. If you want to share the answer, you can say it. If you don't, be like, on to the next one, bro.
got
Next
it. Well,
question.
cool.
Remember?
Yeah, 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 right.
that was
Oh, man.
that was a there's a deeply rooted inside joke with that one. we
Yeah.
we were both making a video at Santa Cruz when we were both serving there, and this my whole contribution in that video was to say next question with an attitude. That was
And the bitch just never stopped. He just kept the attitude all the time and like does that still on a regular basis.
by the way, the camera wasn't the leading factor of me having that attitude as a youth,
So
but
funny. All right, well, cool, man. Then, like I said, I'm like a very like a pretty much open book and kind of dive right into it. I mean, like the fact that like getting kicked out at 19 again, there was like a lot of major factors at play. Like my mom, not just being not strong with her communication and then not having great relationships with males in general, so that kind of like
I see.
compounded it, and then being like an angry teenager on top of it, getting kicked out again the second time around, didn't have a place to stay. That friend who stayed friends and everything, but his parents were like, we did this already for a little
Ah,
bit,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like you lived with us before. So didn't have that option, and that was a much shorter timeline of like, yeah, like a couple of days, get out kind of scenario.
Mm,
And so I
mm,
got in my car and took off, and I guess you could say combination ran away slash kicked out
yeah,
scenario, but not having, again, being stupid and being having some grit, accustomed to like, yo, we're just gonna make it work. Like F that,
yeah,
we're gonna make it work.
yeah, yeah.
So like lived in my car for a bit, and then
Mm.
got pneumonia pretty bad,
Oh shit.
actually. Yeah. So then I bumped into a friend at a overnight diner, and his family was, he was a good family, and um he was basically, short version, I was like, dude, can I stay with you just to like get better? I had this horrible
Mhm.
cough and stuff like that.
Yeah.
um and so and that worked out for a few more months. Actually worked out great because the Minnesota winters, man, like it was cold, like in the
Wow, you were
car,
with yeah.
right? Like, I mean, you would start the car to warm it up just so you could fall back asleep, because and all you wanted was new. It was rough.
So
So
damn, so you were kicked out basically on the worst part time of the year in Minnesota.
I don't know if there's a good time of year in Minnesota. Just, I mean, like if you think about it, like, like
I
I
mean,
think
what's the warmest it gets there, though? Honestly, like
honestly,
summertime. Yeah.
yeah, summer for sure, but like I think probably we're looking at an average high of like 80 something with a couple pops of like 92,
Okay.
91.
Yeah.
Like again, full there's a reason I live in Texas, man. There's a whole it's cold and like most of the I remember
Yeah.
going trick or treating in the snow.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's not a joke. Like dead
Wow.
serious, trick or
I
treating
mean, I
in the
believe it, man. I believe it. I mean, I've
yeah.
seen the Vikings games at home.
You're gonna make me start on this conversation. How are the chefs? Are the chefs still a team? Do they play? Like, are they even an organization
Yeah,
anymore?
I don't even know anymore. Yeah, no,
So yeah, so kicked out 17, or kicked out again 19. It was tough.
19. Yeah.
Yep, doing the
And then
car thing.
you find as you said.
Yeah, my buddy.
By the way, I
Um,
can bleep any names out that you want bleeped out. It's no problem.
Here's his phone number, say a social security number. I got that while I was there. I stole his card. No. Good dude. Yeah, live with the family was cool. They ultimately, after a couple months, were like, "Hey, it's time, time to wrap things up. Time for you to move on." And it was cool because I made amends back with my mom, basically.
During that
At
time.
that point, yeah, exactly. Kind of like, well, hey, look, can I come back? And like, you want to talk about like ups and downs, trials and error, like those hardships that we faced as teenagers being galvanizing moments. Like I would doubt, Pej, that there's much that happens in your life where people may get really upset about that you're kind of like, that's not so bad. Okay, because you've had hardships, you know what I mean? Like you've had challenges, those humble
Yeah.
beginnings.
Yeah.
And granted, so, but it was because of like those experiences. Like I remember vividly calling my mom, like, in overnight, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning at a Perkins, which I don't think they even have in California, and I don't think they have
Yeah.
in Texas either.
Yeah.
But like came back and it was very much a, may I use your phone? Can I go use the wash machine and dryer for some clothes? Very yes, and straighten my stuff up because you start to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um,
So the
what you
respect
have.
factor was back at that point.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You do a trajectory of where thankfully I'm at now, like compared to where I was then, and the expectations are exponentially exceeded. Like never even thought. Like the one thing that's I think that's lacking from an angry male teenager's perspective is hope and future. Like both of those two things, which are intertwined anyway, but you're like, you know what? Like, I don't have a lot of optimism and hope for potential outcomes. I just have ideals. And like, yeah, maybe one day I'll get married. Yeah, maybe I'll,
Yeah.
have a house or whatever. But there's no connect the dots of logic of like, well, then you got to go to school and you do this. I mean, I was like, I barely graduated high school, man. I had to go to summer school all 3 years in a row just to barely graduate at the like damn near bottom of my class in high
Yeah.
school,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? To getting a full academic scholarship like for college after I
Right.
started to apply myself, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and
You started to care, to be blunt.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Starting to care with a little bit of with coaching, mentorship, and some appreciation for what was there. Like I say, when I got back to my mom's house at 19, it was very much may I, yes, thank you,
Yeah.
appreciate that, kind of, all of that, because you got basically your tail kicked pretty hard from a lot of the world. And then you're like, okay, got it. And then at like 20, at like 23, I went to China.
Wow.
Up and
Wow.
left and like, hey, I'm gonna go to the other side of the country or the planet.
Planet. Wow, man. And I want to talk about that. But before we get into your journey into China, uh, you said something about being angry as a teenager.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what would you associate that to the most? Was it
Mm.
because and again, you don't have to talk about it, but
No, happy.
you said that you were son to a single mom.
Yeah.
So was your father not at all in the picture?
Not at all. No, not
Not at
absolutely.
all.
Like, yeah, no, dad. I mean, when I say like not at all, I mean to give it some context around it, which again, first and foremost, all those relationships in my adulthood mended. mended and thriving, like, which is great. Like my dad sent a birthday present to my son, and it was filled with some dope stuff. Like I was
No
like, wow,
way.
way to go, dad. You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
His girlfriend, definitely you can see her influence in there. But my wife and I love both of them now, like as family. So
Yeah.
relationships all better, all mended, and
Excellent.
yeah, and my dad even recognizes, and it's hard for him because he, like, sees that, like, he knew he missed out on my upbringing,
Mhm.
like, entirely. Like, so the
Mhm.
fact that, like, he worked overnights for an airline company as a mechanic throughout my upbringing, so he wasn't really around much at all during the day because he would sleep to get ready for work overnight, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then at like seven, at age 7, either age 7 or age 9, one of the two, like, my parents got divorced. That's what it was. I think at age, I'm trying to remember it. Age 7, they got divorced,
Mm.
and then I saw him every other weekend until age 9. And
Okay.
then there was a fight that happened in a parking lot, and that was it. That was the end of it.
Oh, between you and him.
Between, like, my mom and in fact, I had straight up, like, the people say, blocked it out. I had forgotten about it. It wasn't like till an incident came up later on. I was like, oh yeah, totally forgot about
Wow.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it
Yeah.
was just like it was a, I mean, a lot of, families, all families have derivatives of certain elements with anger management, perhaps communication issues, perhaps, like, um, loftiness or prestige or strive or grit or drive, and at the right level, all of those are good. At the right level, all of those are good. If the volume's cranked up way too high or not there at all on any one of those, it can throw off the dynamics and the
Mm.
balance of harmony, right?
Right. Right.
So I
Right.
know knowing how well you know music and everything,
What's
you're like
that?
you're taking music. Um,
Wow.
it's
Okay.
Chinese, actually. Mu.
Oh,
对了，we're
there you go.
all right.
And we're gonna get it. Yeah. So there it is. Well,
Dude. So
thanks for
yeah, so
opening up about
basically,
that. Yeah.
absolutely. So I think, but your question's fantastic about what's the core of that anger, and I
Hmm.
think that it's it's hard to pinpoint because of um it's a combination of things. It
Yeah.
was cumulative, right? Like,
Yeah.
comparing to, like, when you hear other kids talk about dads not having a dad role model on top of a mom whose communication styles maybe a little bit could
Uh
use
huh.
some work.
Uh huh.
um, and then the couple instances where you get one-off phone calls on some legal matters, I'm sure, or something, child support or whatever, and it's your dad, and you're like, oh, hey dad, what's up? Because you're cognizant of the fact that, like, the divorce wasn't your fault. It
Yeah.
was between your mom and your dad, and you're like, all right, cool. But then your dad's like, oh, well, hey there, Ryan, can I talk to your mom? Not wanting to talk to you, like that compounding
Oh
anger
yeah. Yeah.
factor as well. And again, my dad's, like, remorseful and, like,
Of
really
course.
regretting that, like, of the fact. And again, like, the probably tipping point, and I don't want to spend too much time on it just for the sake of, like, the conversation holistically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how much editing you're going to have to do. Um, but the there was a point where, no joke, Pej, I was visiting back from either California or somewhere. I was back in Minnesota visiting, and I had heard that my dad, who's a musician as well,
Oh. Okay.
yeah, was
Cool.
going to be performing at some place.
Mm.
And the best way to say it was I was going to confront him, basically. Like,
Okay.
it wasn't like go meet, it wasn't like say hello, it wasn't see your dad, it wasn't like have a conversation, it was confront.
Yeah.
And that was the mentality at the time.
Mhm.
So I gathered up, like, my closest friends, like 5 of my best, like, best friends, and was like, hey, half of them were at the wedding that I had to pay you to go to. That I was like, yo, I don't need to get into a fist fight with a senior citizen at this point, right?
Yeah.
So just keep me level set. If I start to lose it, step in, and you know
Okay. So you
and
brought him to protect him.
it was kind of a balance. It was a,
Okay.
support for me, keep me aligned,
I see.
obviously, like,
Well, that's very responsible of you to be proactive and preventative almost, you know, with
I
that
mean, like,
plan, with
well,
that.
dude,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I mean, like, the fact that, like you said, like, if you've had hardships and trials in the past where you've and again, like anger management, like punching holes in walls and doors. I fixed a lot of that. And if you do that long enough, then you're like, okay, let's not do something like that again in
Right.
bigger scale. Like let's put preventative. That's what development and learning is, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So I brought my friends. In fact, and one friend in particular, his name was Jeff. All of them were shocked to hear the fact that like, whoa, we're gonna meet Ryan's dad. Ryan never talks about his dad. We never even heard about his dad. Like, in fact, oh, here's Ryan's dad.
Yeah.
And my buddy Jeff, he's like, oh, good on you, man. You're taking the bigger step. You're going out to meet your dad. Like, and he really helped pivot. So again, like talking about mentorship, friendship, guidance, pivoted me away from like confrontation to just acknowledgement, you know? And I walked up like in hindsight, bad idea, but in the middle of his set on a break.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just walked up right on stage and looked at him and I was like, Carl? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, Ryan. And he looked at me and I was like, yeah, Ryan. And he was kind of like, whoa, because he didn't recognize me. And in fact, the only reason I even recognized him is that my sister graduated and she showed me a picture, and my mom and sister both looked at me when they showed me that picture, and I was like, okay, it's like Jen and one of her professors or something. Like, what are you guys staring at me for? And they're like, that's dad. And I was like, no way. Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, I learned like only a handful of like 4 or 5 years ago, my dad has blue eyes.
Wow.
Did you know that? Yeah. Did you know that? Did you know that, Pat? My dad's blue eyes. So I was like, it was like a shock
all
factor.
musicians know each other. What are you talking about?
Dude. Do you guys know Fumble in Baltimore?
Oh my God. But
yeah.
So how many years was it to that day that you hadn't seen him?
At least a decade.
At least a decade, yeah.
At least, at least.
And you were what, like nearing your 30s by this point?
No. Even like let's say 20, 25, 20, something like that. Yeah, 23, 25, something like that.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, so you face off. He recognizes who you are.
Yeah.
And then what?
Yeah. So like I said, hindsight was a bad idea, but like he goes, I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? How you been? How'd you like to kick a spoon under the floor? Sorry about that.
Don't worry about it.
Don't let it happen again. And it was kind of like, like, hey, like we should get together sometime, or would you like to? And he was kind of thrown off, like genuine shock, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, I just wanted to let you know I'm around. And he was like, all right, well, and he was like, because he was playing for, it was basically I don't know how to freaking describe it, a square dance thing, a jiggy, whatever. It was friggin', I don't know what it was. It didn't matter because I didn't care, right?
Yeah.
And like we showed up, my friends and I, like so much so that the old man at the front door was like, "Look, we don't want any trouble here," and we're like, "What?" Because I mean, I don't know. We didn't fit the average profile of what that place was.
Square dancing. Yeah.
Square dancing. So, and we're like, we assured him, like, "Look, we're here to hear the band. Relax."
Yeah.
And so went and like we hung out for a bit and then kind of just listened to some music and took off. But I could see like my dad like getting teary and like it
threw off his game, of course.
Threw off his game,
his performance. Yeah,
absolutely, as you can imagine it would. So
yeah. Wow. Okay. So thanks for sharing that, first of all. I know that I'm sure that's not always easy to talk about, but
dude, I'm so much an open book now. Like, it's crazy. Like, becoming a parent,
because you've made peace with it.
Do make peace with it. That's huge. Absolutely, man. And that obviously isn't a light switch process of like, oh, you know what? I just decided that I wasn't angry anymore, or that I was going to forgive. Oh, no, it took like, again, like I said, those baby steps, the years of development.
And those baby steps with that small size foot is even longer. Oh my
Next question.
Next question. I had to throw it out.
Love it.
So now we are let's go back to this timeline that you were presenting us. You lived with your mom the proper way this time after second kick out. You call her, you come back, and up until the age of 23, I believe you said.
Yes. Yep. And
And
then yeah.
and then you decided on China. How?
Do you want the story I used to tell girls to impress them, or do you want like the
Oh
real
yeah,
deal?
impress me, boy.
Oh man, so I've always had an appreciation for Asian culture and like da 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 da. No, the truth is, I played a video game with my friend that was about Chinese history in middle school, and he was all super next level nerd about it. I'm very much a nerd. I'm fluent in nerd right now. I'll talk nerd all day. I'm working at a tech company, Pej, like I'll ramp quick. But
Yeah.
the idea of like that he knew all about it, like the history, like this general is one of the five tiger generals in this historical in the Ming Dynasty, and I was like, I don't care. I'm attacking you, press B so we can get through the stupid dialogue of this thing or whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the entire game was called Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And what I found out like much later is that video game was actually based on a Chinese novel, which is a historical novel. It's one of China's four great novels, like kind of up there with like American literature as far as like Mark Twain and the stuff that he's writing of greatest. So it's one of China's four greatest novels,
Wow.
and that it's a historical fiction that's based around the collapse of the Han Dynasty and what happened in history,
Oh,
right? So
got
it's
it,
called
got
the
it.
Three Kingdoms period, Sanguo Yan Yi, where it's like basically China's broken up into three kingdoms after the Han Dynasty, before moving on to like the lesser dynasties,
I see,
the
I
later
see.
Han. Yeah. So
Wow.
like that's the real reason. That's the real. So I played this video game in middle school. My friend knew all about it. I took a course in high school. Was like, hey, that's kind of cool. Went and did a lot of just independent study on my own in the library to learn about Three Kingdoms period. Took a course at a community college and had very, very, very targeted, specific, and unrealistic questions for
Mm,
the Chinese history professor, like the 101 level. Hey,
yeah.
we've got 2,000 years to cover, and you want to talk about 6 decades. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
gotcha, gotcha.
right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was like, well,
yeah.
what about this person, this general, this that, this battle at
Right.
the wall of fire battle? And they're like, look, man, this is not the course for you, right?
I see.
So I was like, all right, well, then what's next? Pragmatic decision, of course, is to buy like a giant plane ticket and fly to the other side of the planet.
So
That's
you were
the
that interested that you needed to go figure this out.
well, it's kind of like twofold, man, because an opportunity came up that was, and it's funny because it ties back to Texas a little bit. An opportunity came up where some friends of the family were like, hey, Ryan, you like Chinese history, you're into that kind of stuff. There's an opportunity where they bring foreign teachers, foreign native English speakers, so you wouldn't qualify, to China to like teach English,
Yeah.
right? And they pay for your plane ticket and they pay for your room and board for 10 days. And I
Oh,
was like, all right, well, sweet. So basically a free trip to China,
yeah.
and then I can kind of like segue off and do my own thing as I'm so good at doing anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it was like, so I did that, went to China, met this dude, kind of a quick funny side story. Again, long story long, great at
No,
this
go for
stuff.
it.
I've been corresponding with Mr. the entire time, right? I don't know if you have to bleep that. Mr. H, whatever, doesn't matter. This
Okay.
dude, very professional emails, like,
All right.
like, hey, Mr. I'd like to apply to be like one of your English teachers for the summer program. Here's my background, here's my reference, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, excellent, fantastic. Go meet me in Guangzhou. Why don't we meet at the McDonald's because it's a recognizable icon. You'll be able to find it. It's this intersection after the airport, blah, blah, blah. Cool, great, thank
Yeah.
you. And I'm there looking forward to meeting Mr. H to be one of his foreign English teachers. And this dude walks in like board shorts and a Hawaiian shirt with like bleach blonde hair. Just pointing that out. And he's I love their dead face. And he's like, "You must be Ryan. What's up?" I'm and I'm like, "What? You're Mr. H?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah. Come on, let's go." And I was like,
Wow.
"Dude," and he just became a buddy. Like, so the fact that like he was the liaison for this English camp at the summer or whatever to hire these national English, like foreign English, native English speakers,
Yeah.
foreigners in China,
Yeah. Yeah.
relative,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we just like we hung out and we kicked it, man. Like then so like I did the English camp for a bit. Then I hung out with his brother, went to this sweet spot like called Yangshuo, which if you've ever gone to have you ever gone to a Chinese restaurant and you see on the wall pictures of like these really artistic rendition of mountains. They're like super tall
Uh-huh.
and thin, and you're like, okay, go ahead, China, with your artwork and blah blah.
Yeah.
No, that's really what it looks like, bro. That's really what it looks like.
Wow.
Like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a real place, kind of where they filmed all that, called Yangshuo in the Guilin province.
No way.
No joke, dude. And it looks is you do a Google search for it, it's incredible. Like I was lucky enough to live there for a bit. So awesome experience, had a great time. And then yeah, so like that's pretty much
So that's
what
from
was the
23 till when?
man, freaking I was in China 23 to 2005.
So you were 20. Okay, so up until 2005. So 2003 is when you went. You're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Okay, so
2003 to
2000.
2005.
I was saying you
Are you
were
just trying to do the
23.
math? Are you just trying to do the math? Just trying to do the math? I'm like 27 right now.
27 years older than. No,
I love it.
20.
love it.
I was saying you were 23 at the time of this departure to China.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
from
yeah.
20, yeah, exactly. So from
Yeah.
2003 to 2005, I got a really crazy video of us doing stuff on CCTV. We became mild pop stars. Like it was crazy.
No way. That's
Yeah,
cool.
dude. I
All
don't tell
right.
people about that because, again, we're gonna talk about career ramifications. Like Ryan was a Chinese pop star. There's video. No. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So wow, man. So 2 years you spent. So obviously, did you know any Chinese prior?
No.
And
no.
I should correct myself. There's two languages, main languages in China, right?
Yeah.
There's Mandarin
Correct.
and
Cantonese.
Cantonese. So Mandarin and Cantonese. Which you learned which one or both?
Mandarin.
Okay.
Yeah, but like again, officially speaking, because it gets a little wacky, and I don't want to semantics or the national language of China is Mandarin. National language, right?
Okay.
Cantonese is spoken predominantly in the south, definitely sort of in Taiwan, in Guangzhou, Hong Kong, that area all speaks Cantonese,
Okay.
but they also speak Mandarin because
I
it's a
see.
national language, right?
I
So,
see.
and then it fractures into many dialects after that.
Right. So it's like English and then Minnesota.
You betcha. Yeah. Okay. Here. If you wanted some lutefisk,
Yeah, see, you lost me at that one.
you don't.
But that's okay. So you learn a good amount because
Yeah.
you're clearly very fluent in Mandarin. So 2 years, now you're 25, and what was that
What's
again?
next?
What was the time, or more importantly than what's next is this timeline of 2 years. Was that predetermined, or was that you reached 2 years and you're like, time for a change?
No, great question. So like, oh man, again, like it's depending on how much we want to get into it. It was frick, man, trying to recap it. There wasn't a fixed timeline, that's
Okay.
for sure, right?
Okay.
It like
Okay.
it was me just kind of like doing my own thing where in short, I'll give you like the non-joking highlight reel. Went to China, dig this English camp, was like, yo, this is cool. I'm not going back. Stuck around,
Oh,
dead
wow.
serious,
Yeah.
right? Like, screw the return ticket. All right, that's cool. You do stuff on Beijing TV, CCTV, and some other stuff. Sure, I'll come along. Let's do it. We basically won China's Got Talent. Like,
No
and
way.
dude, yeah, like I got some crazy stupid stories.
I gotta
like,
see these.
I might show you the video on the phone. I'm not gonna, but I'll show you. Like,
Yeah, I'm
dude,
down.
dude.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and then let's see, freaking bounced around. He was like, yo, I need an English teacher in this spot. Did that and had a blast, and then went to school to learn Mandarin formally, like, because he was having a blast. Like, he'd be like, 什么什么什么我想告诉我的朋友他们说美国来是 Ryan, and everyone would look and be like, ha ha ha, Ryan, and I'd be like, ni hao, and that's the end of it. Like, like, I was like, I'm not having any fun. I need to learn some Mandarin, right? I was like, so I went to school to learn Mandarin formally, right? Like, to get an educated class, get at least conversational. And then from there, very much was just the immersion process, exponential. Like, how do you say apple? Like, like I don't care. I want a red fruit. Give me a red fruit. And they're like, okay, you want a red fruit? Like, yes, give me one red fruit. And they're like, putao. And you're like, okay, yeah, a putao is great. Just one putao. And then they hold up a grape. And you're like, no, give me a bieta de gua. Give me a different red fruit. And
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right, shigua. And you're like, I don't care. Give me a shigua. And they're like, watermelon? Like, no, bieta de. And then they finally get to pingua. And you're like, I don't care. I'm taking whatever this pingua is, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'll just take it. And then they're like, pingua. And you're like, okay, cool, pingua, apple. Yeah, that's what I want.
So
But you
learn.
also learned how to say grape. And you also learned how to say watermelon, right?
Yeah.
So all that exponential
So they
stuff coming
wanted,
together.
through like the language barriers, you actually learned it. So
Yeah.
and that's good. That's really good. I mean, I guess that's how anybody really learns, just
Yeah.
going through grocery stores, like my grandmother used to do.
That's awesome.
She would
dude.
come here and just straight up speak Farsi to the guy.
That's awesome. I
And the
love
guy,
it.
and somehow she got what she wanted out of that. So,
Very innovative, smart. Like that's how it's
Yeah,
done, man. Like
that's
you learn
awesome.
real quick,
yeah.
or you adapt. I guess I wanted an apple, but we're eating a grape today. All right, cool.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you so
Exactly.
much.
Exactly. You either adapt or you learn. So
Right.
that's cool, man. So
Yeah.
so you're now okay. So now we go to the what's next. So when do you plan your next? Are you coming back to Minnesota, or where are you going from here?
Dude, so all right, so cool. So like so from China, left China, and oh, you know what it was, bro? My family was going on a trip to Haifa. That was the major catalyst to come back from China. I almost totally forgot. So it was like my mom had been planning this. We had been planning it. We're on a wait list for like years, right?
Yep.
To go to Haifa. And it was like, oh, okay, well, sorry, China, I gotta go. We'll catch you later. I'm gonna
Yeah.
do this thing. And like this work horse guy was like of this English camp wanted me to keep me around. And I was like, hard no. We're going and I'll come back, right?
Yeah.
So I left, went on the wonderful like pilgrimage trip with my family, had a great time. Was gonna spend basically the rest of the month back in Minnesota before returning back to China. And I got my mom was making falafel. Now, my mom's an excellent cook. She does a really good job. As far as managing oil and fire combined, she does not do a good job. Like we have had multiple occasions in my house where there was like too much oil in the pan on an open flame, and we have suddenly gotten like a oil candle on the freaking like no joke. Like
Wow.
so she basically almost burnt the house down, lit the kitchen on fire. And the funny thing about my mom, and this is where she's again a different mind, right? Which kind of negative ramifications in the communication style for reading nonverbal cues and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But when there's a tragic concern, when there's something big, my mom's excellent. And so she said it so calmly. I'll never forget it. I was 2 rooms away playing hockey, and she said, Ryan, can you come in? Can you come here? So calm.
Yeah.
Like it was like kind of like, hey, I need you to set the table, or can you do this or whatever. Like didn't even think about it. And I was like, okay. Walk over there, and there are like 3-foot flames coming off the stove, going over the awning, hitting the wooden cabinets above it, like turning them black, right? And with my mom trying to put the lid onto the pan, but the flames were so like raging that she put it down, they would go over her hand, like right, like it was nuts. So of course, like a non-logical person, I'm like, "Bow, mom," and I grab the pan, and I'm balancing the pan because I'm gonna dump it into the metal sink, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's what you do when you're not thinking. And I was doing a really good job holding it, and it was like, and like the heat was nuts. And I was balancing it, doing a great job. And as soon as I went down towards the sink, because the oil was boiling, the oil came up over the pan and landed on my hand, which then, of course, my hand caught fire. So That
Jeez,
was
man.
exciting. Yeah. Well,
Oh
then,
my God.
yeah. Well, then, of course, I let go of the pan because, when your hand lights on fire, that's typically
Yeah.
what you do, right? So I dropped this pan full of oil that's on fire, and oil goes everywhere, and the whole kitchen catches on fire. So that's exciting. And so I skin grafting, 3rd-degree burns, all of that. So I go into bathroom almost blackout, bouncing against the wall with the razor focus of keep your hand in the water. That's all you need to do. Hand in the water. You can collapse, fall, whatever, keep your hand in the water. And that's what I was doing.
Wow.
So
Survival mode.
dude, it was kind of nuts. So hand in the water, friggin' mom cleans up the fire. We drive we basically make a 45-minute drive in about 15 minutes to get to a hospital.
Yeah.
And that was crazy as well. Where basically they told me that I was going to need skin grafting, which would have been fine and dandy, but I didn't have health insurance. So that you get assigned a caseworker and all this stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
And and again, moderation has never been my strong suit. That's good and bad in a lot of ways. You want to talk about work ethic? We got work ethic. I'm proud to say that I've won a bunch of awards at work.
Yeah.
But again, moderation and balance never being strong suit for me. So when the doctor was like, "Hey, you're gonna need skin grafting. Here's what you need to do," they're like, "Eat protein." And I was like, "You want me to eat protein?" They're like, "Yeah, you need eat a lot of protein to help the skin growth." And I was like, "Watch me."
Wow.
And we were eating so much protein, burger, steak, protein chips, protein shakes, all day, ridiculous amounts. And so because again, moderation is not my strong suit, and I was like, oh, I'll eat it, all right, watch this.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they 2 weeks later they went back and they had scheduled the skin grafting, they had scheduled for it. And the doctor, I couldn't afford that. That was buying 3 cars.
Right.
There's no way I'm going to be able to afford skin grafting without health insurance, having a caseworker, social worker for the state of Minnesota. So basically, doctor was like, "Hey, can you feel this? Can you do that? Can you move this?" And they're like, "Wow, you are really lucky. You are among the 2% of the population that doesn't have to get skin grafting." Based on an oil fire burn of this caliber, they said it's 400 degrees that stuff boils and stuff like that.
Jeez,
So
man.
the fact that and again,
so
I said,
the protein overdue is what helped with that?
I would say that there's probably a lot of factors. If you look at again holistically medicine and benefits and all that, and
Yeah.
I'd say it didn't hurt. I was probably consuming. I had a rice protein that's very dense, from a gram. Max could tell you more. Go listen to the podcast from Max. It's great. He's a physical fitness bodybuilder. He knows all about it. But I think that it was there was a lot of divine assistance on that one. People good, good thoughts and prayers that were sending out for healing and stuff like that. That I certainly think have a rippling effect. But at the end of the day, however you get to it, no one asks how a hot dog is made. They just know at the end of the day it's a hot dog, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I didn't have to have skin grafting, which really threw me for a shock when the following 2 days later, a nurse called me and said, "Okay, for tomorrow's skin grafting, we're gonna do this, this, and other." Whoa, the doctor told me I didn't need skin grafting.
Yeah.
They were so confident that I was going to need skin grafting.
Oh
But
my
they
God.
scheduled the skin grafting. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
the fact that today,
Yeah,
can't.
I never knew this story, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
I
dude,
mean, I would have never even been able to see it because his hand looks better than mine.
completely. That's again, I need a copy of this recording. So the fact that my hand looked like fried chicken, dunk it in, take it out. It was crazy, bro.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
This
So
is after China.
this is after China. This is
After Haifa and after China.
after
and-
Haifa, exactly.
Yeah.
China, Haifa. Let's make falafel and burn the kitchen. And then it was oh, guess what? Because I had an assigned caseworker and my case was being processed by the state of Minnesota for whatever, I wasn't allowed to leave the country.
Oh wow. So you
So
couldn't
I was
go back to China.
couldn't go back to China, which actually it's funny because it all turned out to be a huge blessing anyway. Bro, the reason I was in China in the first place, granted, yes, the video game, the drive, the
Yeah.
conflict and family at home, but ultimately my family couldn't afford to send both me and my sister to college.
Hmm.
So I was a value suck. I don't want to like I was a cost. I was
Yeah.
expense
Yeah.
at
Yeah. Yeah.
at living at home, right?
Right.
And so the fact they're like, well, all right, well here's a good opportunity to go to China using a skill set that I have, like speaking English, and I can not only earn more money in China than I could possibly imagine, not only from the currency exchange from renminbi to US dollars, but I'm basically just hanging out and having a fun time, like talking to people, cheating, doing stuff on stage and whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not costing my mom, who was already in the lower income, lower
Yeah.
middle,
It's like
lower middle
lightning
class.
in a bottle type of situation for you at that time.
I don't exactly know what that means, but I'd say that's accurate. I'll trust
Meaning,
you.
I just meaning like things started to make sense and aligned. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
like it was confirmation that you needed to go to China. Like that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so the fact that like, okay, so boom, burn your hand, you're not going back to China, right? And it's like, okay, well, what's next, right? I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm going to go do some volunteer work
Mhm.
while my hand was semi-functional. Oh, well, that's actually kind of another funny story.
All right, go
Pez,
for it.
you're gonna have to edit the crap out of this.
No, we'll
So
just make it a two-parter at
okay,
worst. At
all right.
worst.
So after China, so the other thing that like got me back from China now was basically family going on pilgrimage, came back. Um, there's some other stuff around there. Like they flew us to New York and we did some shows and stuff like that. And yeah, it's
No
another.
way. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I've got the pamphlet somewhere from like I performed at Lincoln Center. Can you
You're
believe that?
kidding me. I've
Dead
never even
serious, dude.
performed in
Yeah.
front of Lincoln Center.
Out there
And
with
you
a sign and cardboard. Yeah, no, performed at Lincoln Center. At the time, of course, I didn't have a damn clue what Lincoln Center even was, right?
Right,
Like I
right,
was
right,
like,
right.
okay, great. We're gonna go see the Statue of Liberty and perform at the place named after Lincoln. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Wow. That's
that
cool
was
though,
it.
man. You and
Yeah.
that's a story your kids will love to hear. That's awesome.
We'll see. We'll see. Um, and so yeah, so got back and was like, well, how about I just go back? I've always wanted to see California, like I, hung out in California, checked out Bosch, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and the administrator at the time, oh Bosch, like conference retreat center, right? I don't know what context I need. Doesn't matter. It's your podcast. You edit it how you want. I'm gonna be Ryan.
We've discussed Bosch with Max too, but
Perfect.
it's it's basically a school in California for the under the banner of the Baha'i faith. So
Yeah, a conference retreat center. A lot multifaceted conferences held
multifaceted,
there.
yeah. Yep.
School like classes held there.
Right.
Outside rentals. Some
In
people
the mountains of Santa Cruz, by the way.
in the redwoods. Some people do their weddings there.
That
You know.
some one person that I know. But
That's a funny story too, actually.
yeah, I know. You've got plenty of those.
I think they're funny.
Your hand looking like fried chicken must have been the
Dude,
funniest.
that was pretty. That was something. That was something. I'll tell you what.
I never knew, man. I never knew you had. That's crazy, though. Seriously, that was a crazy story. By the way, how did
0
that
out of 5
house,
stars. Don't recommend.
how did the house turn out? What happened with the fire?
So yeah. So funny thing is like, so my best friend. So my mom and I like raced to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
My sister is like cleaning stuff up. She calls like my best friend to come over and help out, and she and he like clean up all the oil, like basically just like like it was
So hold on, 911 was never an option at this point.
in a certain financial bracket. I think you do a cost benefit analysis of pulling in.
I got you.
Certain like ambulances or whatever.
I know. I get it now. I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just in the and also probably in that heat of the moment, like the best idea
Right.
that she could
Yeah.
have come up with was getting a friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. Like, I mean,
So wow. Okay.
humble beginnings.
So you burn your hand to a crisp, and then you go.
It's true.
You get. So do you get the graft or you don't get the graft?
No. Didn't get the skin grafting.
You didn't get it because they just had it scheduled, but you refused it.
Right.
You didn't need it. Okay.
Right. So yeah, so great to bring us back on track. So after that, dude, man, like this is where it gets really, from my perspective, from life-changing, cool stuff.
Yeah.
This is where it really starts to kick in because of the fact of like, okay, oil fire, skin grafting, all that, can't leave the country, have the social worker,
Yeah.
have like something like $78,000 in debt, that whatever, something ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what am I gonna do? I guess I'll go do some volunteer work at Bosch.
There you go.
So
So was that your first choice after that, or you just like, was the opportunity like presented to you? How did that work out?
so in that little stint of like traveling around, like I said, going to New York, we also performed in LA. We performed at an air base in Ohio. I guess that's like
Okay, now you're showing off. Yeah.
so it was my first choice. It was like a, hey, I've got a lot of time to kill while my case gets processed.
Right.
Can I come back and do some volunteer work? And so they said, sure, like come back, do some volunteer work.
Yeah.
So I came back, I did some landscaping, I worked in the kitchen a little bit.
Yeah.
And basically they were being kind enough to let me stay there while my social worker processed basically the claim for, the oil fire. And like, one a crazy set of events, bro. This is, like I said, where it gets nuts. Some outside third party institution. I had been basically, the claim said, here, we're going to give you this amount of money, but the rest of the stuff that you have to pay is on you. And you've got to pay basically the hospital system as well as the doctor, two separate entities that you got to pay, right?
Okay.
And they've got an associated cost for both of them. But we can do really generous monthly payment plans. It's 0% interest, so you just got to pay it back, right? And I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so it was something like $25 a month that I was gonna be paying for, like,
Wow.
yeah, dude, like I'd still be paying it now, like, you know what I mean, like, so, but so basically I made like the first, I don't know, like couple payments or whatever, because again I was volunteering, so it's not like I had an income, whatever. Where I call one day to make a payment, and they're like, oh, it's showing here that you have a zero balance payment, but it's possible that they transferred that cost to the hospital or the doctors, one of the reverse.
Right.
Some institution paid off the other institution, so they didn't want to collect all the debt. So call that other institution. So I said, okay. So I called the other institution. The terms and conditions are all intact. It's just you don't pay us anymore. You just pay one person. So I call back and they're like, oh yeah, I got your account right here. It actually shows that your balance was cleared from a third party entity that had some sponsorship.
No way.
And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah, I still don't know who it was. I
What?
don't. Yeah.
Bro, talk about a miracle, man.
Talk about like yeah, a miracle. Like, yes, like absolutely.
Wow.
Here's a guy who has no money, no education, no prospects for a job, on basically no health insurance, that was paying $25 a month. And some institutions was like, hey, you're a good person, you're doing work,
Wow, man. That is amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah, wow. And you're in Santa Cruz at this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was doing volunteer work at Bosch when I got that notice.
And this is where you and I met.
Yeah.
Initially, right?
Yeah.
This is 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I had no idea, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that just, I mean, what a blessing. I mean, a blessing and
genuinely a blessing.
Genuinely a blessing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't let anyone ever mention or try and tell you that there's not absolute blessings and assistance and divine confirmation that happens throughout your life because you either A, miss it, B, wasn't aware of it, or lastly, you recognize it and appreciate it and can't explain it, but you've got the feeling of what it was.
Was that a was that like a period of like serious realization for you at that time when you got this break?
Tell me more about that realization.
Meaning like how did you, I mean, obviously you were elated, I'm sure, that
Yeah,
this fat bill is now
yeah, yeah,
gone.
yeah,
But like beyond that, did you think, I mean, you're like 25 at this point,
yeah,
26
yeah,
at this point. So
yeah.
you're like, I'm just wondering where you like
Where my head at? Kind
where
of
was
thinking.
your head at afterwards?
Yeah, yeah.
Like what
So
was
Pej,
yeah.
I'll tell you, like, here's the funny thing, and this is again, these are like minute details that I don't typically talk about. When I talk about it, when I was meeting my wife, when you talk about the scar story, and you're like, check it out, I fell on a fork, and you're like, yeah, dip my hand in 400-degree oil, like
Yeah.
stuff like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But the cool thing is, I had actually given my sister about, I don't know, it was maybe $200, $100, $200, something like that, because of something that she needed, something for help with either my mom or whatever, about a month prior,
Mm.
right? And I was like, yo, family needs it. This $1 million institution that I'm paying $25, I can come up with $25 in a month, like whatever. You need
Yeah.
$200, here you go. And I absolutely, so I say that because of like what you're thinking, as far as like divine assistance, blessing, confirmation. That's where I defaulted to. I was like, oh, okay. Definition of sacrifice. Take a little definition of faith.
Uh-huh.
Difference between faith and belief is
Uh,
action,
uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
That's it. I mean, I'm sure you've had a podcast about it, but like you can believe something all day. Okay, I believe you. That's great. But it's an act of faith to go
I
out and
see.
do it based on something that you only have heard.
I see.
So
Wow.
the idea of like, all right, so it wasn't even out of faith I did it. It was out of like, hey, my family needs some money. I got $200 that I actually got from my mom's homeowner's insurance because I burned the crap out of my hand, and was like, here you go, you got it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the recognition was like, what a blessing, and that has to be because of the actions that I took.
That's where your mind
Yep.
went
Yeah.
initially. Okay. Wow.
I think about that stuff all the time, like little stuff coming up, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Like blessings like that.
absolutely. I mean, I could. So I mean, all the time, Pej. Like the idea of, I mean, even just this last quarter at work, like I basically did an act of compromise, and did the noble thing, did the noble lofty thing, got this giant deal that we hadn't predicted to come in, and I hit like something like 190% of my quarter. Yeah,
Wow.
one rep of the year, and
Yeah.
like little stuff like that. They're like, realistically, it's only because like the CIO of this organization, like reaching out to approve something that typically on status quo would be like, let that go, we don't have to worry about that. Little stuff like that happening, man.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you could parallel this to like two or three things. If you're thinking about buying a Toyota Corolla or Tacoma or whatever, you suddenly start seeing Tacomas all over the
Yes.
place.
Yes.
There's one. Oh, there's another one. Oh,
Yes.
there's another one, right? So the same kind of thing when languages, you hear something, you notice something, it starts being everywhere. If you start recognizing the application of divine blessings and assistance or whatever, and appreciation for what it is, you become a heightened sense of awareness. And you're like, and then you can even take that one level further, more pragmatically, I guess, on the real level. If you start being courteous, if you start utilizing virtues and qualities, that it will unconsciously allow other people to do the same thing. Courtesy, generosity, compassion, all of these things. And so, like, but if you don't recognize it as a quality, hey, well, that moron just held the door for me. Guess you're not getting in first. Out of my way. You know what I mean? Like, again,
Yeah.
it's a recognition and
Well,
and
yeah, it's glass half
awareness.
full, half empty mentality, right?
It
And
depends on what you're drinking.
oil,
Orange juice.
400-degree oil.
400 degrees. Yeah, exactly. 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely would do again.
No, man, you're right though. I mean, it does boil down to like what your perspective is in those moments of tests and in moments of blessings, like both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how
Thankful in adversity, generous in prosperity.
Yeah, that's true.
I will release part 2 of this 2-part conversation with Ryan Burke as a bonus episode this Thursday. He will discuss life after Bosch, finishing school, getting married, moving down to Texas, and becoming a father of 2. You don't want to miss it. As always, subscribe, like, and follow Fumble Podcast on YouTube and your podcast platform of choice. Thank you again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Together we'll purify the mind and have a good time. I'll showcase your very best.